Go for it.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad everyone's here. I'm Jackie Clayton, and I want to introduce you to my very fine friend, the famous, world renowned, everybody's best friend and more, Catherine Mathis. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'll pay you later for that fantastic introduction. So, I'm Catherine Mattice, and I'm so excited to work with you on this conversation today. I know we had a really great conversation when we were sort of planning this out. So, it's going to be even better.
Yes, it's so much fun. I find it funny because like the topic today of making work from home work, and yet we are in our homes, right? We welcome people into our homes or our personal spaces. A lot of us don't have a lot of options. We have to find a way of making things work. So i
Yeah.
love i love the topic, and can I tell you a secret?
Yes, please.
Let me show you part of my secret of how I make work at
Do
home.
share.
This is my faux wall. Can you see it moving?
Oh, yeah.
I had to build walls to make sure that I had a separate workspace that I could just seal off. I'm one of those that I didn't have an extra office.
Nice.
And so I didn't want everybody to see my kitchen. So I had to come up with this little faux wall. Do you have any work at home secrets maybe that can
I
be shared?
love that. You know what I did? I can't work from home. I need to have that separation of leaving and driving somewhere.
Yes.
I found a tiny little warehouse space behind a bookstore in my little city of La Mesa, which is right next to San Diego. And so I was in a warehouse space that I made super cool, and I decorated it so it was so eclectic, and I loved it, and it made me happy, and it was 600 bucks a month, and it was just worth it for me to have a place to go. Because if I'm at home, I have to step over the kids' toys, and I can't go in the kitchen to get lunch because there's dishes. I couldn't do it. So that was my trick, and it wasn't a fancy place, but I made it very me and happy, and it was my happy place. So now I'm in a more formal corporate office that we've moved into recently, but that was my trick. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I can tell you, I did a webinar similar to what we're doing right here. It was my kids were at home, and I had my son go to get snacks in the middle of the webinar. And
Mhm.
the funny part is he thought that he was sneaking in. And so you could see him creeping in the background. And my phone was blowing up, and everyone's like, "Oh, I see TJ. Like, where are the snacks and how are things going?" And I was just like, "Oh my gosh." And it taught me the number one thing that we need is just levity and grace,
Yes.
right?
And that's what's been so beautiful is that work has always been, even when we talked about work-life balance, I feel like it was like work-life balance meant that you go to work and then you turned it off and you went home. But now work-life balance is like we're just going to be the same person all of the time. And that's what work-life balance is, that I can be myself whenever, all the time. And it doesn't matter if I'm at work or at home. I'm just me. And I mean, I too, we've all had our kids coming in. And actually, I was also doing a webinar to about 150 people. And I've been getting my ADU, my granny flat, updated. And so there were construction workers, and they let one of the dogs out. So I'm giving a webinar. I see my dog on the other side of the window where she's not supposed to be. I go, I have to go get my dog. I'll be right back. Sorry. I had to go and get my dog. Then I realized the other dog is literally missing. So I come back into the webinar and I said, I'm sorry, I have to go. My dog is missing. Sorry. And I which previous I might have had to feel like I'm just gonna let my dog go missing and hopefully she's okay. But yeah. So that was my kind of big faux pas fail of COVID.
It's the truth. I mean, and is it a faux pas, right? I mean, I still like when my dog barks, I'm always like, you know, it's there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can tell you, like, but I do love the work from anywhere spot. I um I have an RV that we call the dinosaur. So, like, I spent $1,000 for it from Habitat for Humanity. If you're picturing this, um, there are a couple TV shows from like the 80s or 70s when they show an RV. It's that one.
Okay.
And
Love it.
so, but I do fantasize of being able to, like, oh, let's just go to, North Carolina. They have Wi-Fi. I'll be able to do that with part of that flexibility, because I think sometimes, um, like, it's great that we can change our environment if we have the opportunities to the environment. Or, like me, if you can't change the environment, at least you can throw up a
Build a
wall
wall.
and
Yeah,
pretend that it's not. This is made from like drywall and PVC pipe.
I love it. That's so
Um,
awesome.
it took much longer than it did in the YouTube video, though. I do
I'm
have to
sure.
tell you.
And I know lots of other people too, they've done that where they buy the things from Amazon, like the curtains that have some sort of view behind them or something. And I guess I wonder what will the future hold if kids are now attending school from their RV because their parents, maybe homeschooling and things, that's all going to get more popular. It's funny because homeschooling always sort of had a I don't know, there's a little judgment there, like, oh, you homeschool, you're not going. But then
Right.
all of a sudden, those homeschooling parents were far and above.
Oh,
That's all they're
fully. We
doing.
were all looking to the homeschool parents. Like, what are we supposed to do? I mean,
Yeah.
I felt like that. My when we started, I've worked at home. The thing that's funny is I've worked at home for a really long time.
Hmm.
And I don't even know what it's like to be in an office. Like, if someone asked me, I told someone I have these red Uggs, but because they didn't have the tan ones and it was like on sale. And so when I said, I would show up to work in these Uggs at some
Uh-huh.
point because I forget that I have them on. The world would be able to say, I mean, they're bright red, like they're this
Love
color.
it. Love it.
Um, but it's like I have that advantage of being used to what this is. But I can
Hmm.
imagine some people, literally, they've been at home for 2 years and this
Yep.
is their first time and they're ready
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
find a different place.
Yeah, and I would say so. One of my big tips that I've been sharing a lot is that my team and we're in a Google Hangout all day. And of course, people come and go. Like I'm not in there obviously right now because I'm here with you, but it really facilitates just the bonding that happens when you're in an office, or work together on a work site. And that has been a saving grace for us. So we come in, you just log in and sometimes you're in there by yourself because everybody else is out, but they'll pop in and it's been really, really awesome. And maybe not everyone can do that, or pull that off or would want to do it, but I would definitely suggest some sort of like, hey, every other day, a room is open from this time to this time so people can come in and it really then you're checking your emails and then you can have that, oh my gosh, that one client emailed back. And so a lot of times we're not even talking, we're working, but then you can still have those little ad hoc conversations that happen when someone's in the office with you. So that is a big tip that I've been sharing and has been really great for my team.
I love that. I love that idea. And like you said, if you don't have all that time, we implemented where I am what office hours on Friday. We're together
Mhm.
for 3 hours. Um, a lot of it is just like what's been great this week. Let's share what's been working. Is there anybody who needs any assistance for next week? And we open it to the whole company. Anybody can join if they have questions about talent acquisition or diversity. We welcome them to come into our office hours
Mhm.
and we share different things. But then what's really fun is that you can be so collaborative and come up with ideas,
Mhm.
because you can't forget sometimes that you have a full team. It's so important that you recognize that even though you feel like you're alone, there's other people. Like, you don't have to shoulder the burden alone. And so it's nice to know that I'm going to get to hang out with my team. Now, the first time I did it, I thought, no one's going to want to do this. Like 3 hours is a really
Mhm.
long time. So then I was like, okay, we'll do it for 2 hours. And then it was the team. And I don't know if any of the team is out there. Hello, my alphabet team. That's what I call my team. But it was like, they were like, can we do this again? Can we do this every Friday? And then we were like, let's invite people. And it's nice to just say, like, let's talk about LinkedIn. Let's talk about this article. Let's share because we don't have that side chatter or the water cooler conversations
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. It definitely, all been forced to find ways to bond. And that's awesome that you're taking 3 hours. I think that's another change that's happened with work is maybe things aren't moving as fast as they were because we're all talking about giving each other grace and flexible work. And it's just, we don't have to do a bazillion things. And it's fine if on Fridays we take 3 hours to do this because that's important too. And
Yes.
going to ensure our success. And I definitely have felt myself relax personally, and just in terms of like, we have to work, we have stuff to
Yeah.
do. You
And that's exactly right. Like last week we had this goal, we had this deadline, and I could see it in everybody's faces. Like, we have to work. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna we're not gonna work during this hour. Like we're gonna connect. It's like, and if we aren't able to get to it, we can do it next week. I promise. I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah.
Because we need each other whole. And
Yeah.
I think it is. I kind of cringe when people say bring your whole self, but like bring what you're comfortable with and grow with your team. If you don't feel like that, grow with your team.
Yeah.
Because as you go on that journey together, then you can share more things, and especially like what's working and what's not working, or those bad days.
Hmm.
I saw an article that said a lot of people are mourning what they didn't have. Like they're
Mm.
mourning what would it be like, oh, I miss happy hours. Like not a person, but just that event, you
Hmm.
know?
Gotcha.
Or I miss like the family picnics that we used to have in the summertime, or what would my life have been. And
Hmm.
so we don't know what people are going through. Like we're still kind of in the thick of things. And so
Yeah. But I think that speaks to, well, what we were saying at the beginning. We've opened our homes up. We can see
yes,
inside each other's homes, and our hearts have opened up a little bit more. COVID has definitely caused us to just say we are human, and we're not a bunch of robots who are just going to pull through COVID,
that's right.
unscathed. And so I think a benefit of COVID, or a silver lining, is that it has made it okay to be vulnerable. And I've always been saying, when I talk about harassment prevention and anti-bullying and all this stuff that's in my world where I'm working, that if you want people to tell you about harassment happening at work, or if HR wants that to be reported, then we have to make room for vulnerability. Because if somebody feels harassed and you ask them to tell you about it, you're asking them to violate a social norm, right? Because at work, we're not
Yes.
supposed to cry. It makes you look weak and all these things. But hey, you're being taken advantage of, or harassed, or bullied, or you feel uncomfortable, but go ahead and be vulnerable here in the HR office. So I think the shift towards being more vulnerable at work is happening, and I'm looking forward to that. And we were like that at Civility Partners. I wear my everything on my sleeve, and everybody knows everything about everything.
Right.
And maybe not all bosses have to be like that. Maybe I overshare, but it has created an environment where we all share a lot. And I really appreciate that in my team. And my one of my team members told me on Saturday, she's like, I just feel like I'm not engaged right now because of some things she's going through. And she's like, I probably shouldn't say that to you. I'm like, share away. If you tried to say that you were fully engaged, then I would call BS. So it's
Right.
okay. I appreciate that you're doing your best right now while you're going through a hard time. And also I'm going through a hard time, and I'm doing my best, and we'll get through.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially, that is the a thing, like we are, like you said, we're in different homes. We were going through this together, and I think a lot of people in leadership became human, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like it's not the corner office, it's my kitchen. right? And it's like,
Yes.
and I have to use my kid's laptop, or the dog barks and the UPS or whatever.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting the other day. I had ordered lunch and I could see the person coming up, and I was like, I am so hungry. Like I was just staring through the window, like, and I was like, I have, pardon me, I have to go. I was thinking like I'm running outside to go get my tacos. I am
Yeah.
sorry. Um, but it's like people realize that we're human.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also given us an opportunity to really be like that distributed team and learn about different cultures or learn about what's going on in different places.
Hmm.
One of the things that I know, this may sound silly, but I love it. Every morning we get a team text with all of our the major cities in the states where we hire,
Oh,
and it
cool.
has a weather report, and it has like a fact of the day. And I think about it as we recruit people
Mhm.
from the talent acquisition, like, it's really cold there today. Like, what's going on? Because I think sometimes we can get so bogged down that we forget of looking at the whole picture and how we can connect. And that's kind of like a default when you meet somebody in person. You're like, oh, lovely weather we're having, or oh gosh, there's a foot of snow.
Yeah.
Any way to connect. And I look at it every day. Like I need to know the weather in Chicago, Honolulu, Portland,
Yeah.
Seattle. I want to know because I think we all strive for that connection.
That's a really cool idea. I'm thinking, yeah, it emulates the kind of conversations that we have. I mean, I'm in San Diego, and people know that it's always the topic as we're getting to know each other. What's the weather like here versus there? But then it makes me think too about the level of communication that's necessary to maintain the bond. So that little tiny piece of communication that maybe feels a little bit irrelevant actually is super relevant because it helps you understand what everybody else is going through. It gives you a window if you have to talk to somebody somewhere else that maybe you've never met. Like that is a brilliant idea. Whoever decided to do that at your organization that's amazing because it does make you think like maybe you need to sit down and brainstorm what are all the little nuances of communication and is there a way to facilitate those so that people don't feel isolated and I don't know. You've given me, I think there's a blog post to brewing in my head. That's
You know
awesome.
what? Maybe we should connect. Maybe we should write something
We
like
should
that. I
write a
think
blog
we
post
should do that.
together.
We
Yeah,
should do that.
yeah.
But it
It's
just makes me connect. Like, I think what's nice is that I will tell you, I worked at an organization prior to where I am now, and I was watching during football season, and there was a commercial, and it was a Slack commercial, and it had that sound that and I was like in a panic. Like I was in a full panic, ran over to my computer and it was like a Sunday and I was like, what's going on? And my husband's like,
yeah,
what's wrong? Because he didn't hear it. He doesn't use Slack. So he didn't hear it. But I was just like and I realized I um I like when I heard that sound, I was fully triggered into like
work
panic
mode.
at this previous organization. But now I know my first one is always the weather and what's going on during the day. And my second one is like this puzzle. And my third one might be about dogs. And so that's another way of making it work, but keeping it organized so that
Yeah.
it's a conversation about dogs. One thing that we do to connect is that there's like we dig dogs and then there's we prefer cats, but there's foodie Slack channels and there's we have kids, we're families, like we
Uh-huh.
sing, we do this, um, so that you can try to get to know each other, but in different ways so that you're not completely not being productive. Like you
Right.
can see what's highlighted is, oh, it's a post about a dog, maybe you don't have to run over there. But now I get excited when I hear I'm always like, so what's going
What's
on?
happening?
Yeah, I want to know. I have FOMO. I'm like, oh, what's going on?
I'm thinking too that this work-life balance, kind of going back to that and communication. I mean, my team and I, we all like to watch TikToks, and so we send TikToks. And sometimes I notice they're maybe at 10 o'clock at night or something. And it's, nobody expects a response. It's not like, oh, it's a work text, I have to respond, but it keeps us bonded. And usually they're work related, TikToks or something related to what we're going through at work or what have you. But yeah, these are all important ways that we've got to stay connected. I guess one question I have for you, Jackie, because my team is small and we're not super distributed. We're all in California. One's in Utah, but she's coming back to California. How do you keep the playing field level for people in different parts of America who maybe have different access to internet that's going to hurt or help their work? And I mean, how do you process all of that? How do you deal with
Yeah,
that?
that and I will tell you, one of our principles is learn by making, and we are learning by making. Let me
Mhm.
preface it by that. One of the things that we started looking at is like onboarding a new employee. So the company I worked for was headquartered in Seattle.
Mhm.
I live in Texas, but now we hire people in New York, in Chicago, all over the place. And so, one of the things that we started considering is when somebody is brand new, what can we send them in advance that they can look at in their time zone, in their hours, like on their first day or the first week? Can we schedule it so that they have activities that maybe it's a video, or we have them partner with somebody else who's in that time zone?
Mhm.
I always like to say it's like our little secret, like from 8 to 10. Half the company is in the Eastern time zone, and from 8 to 10, it's just us. It's just us Central and East Coast. Like we have our little coffee talks,
Our little
and
world
no one's
in
gonna
here.
interrupt and do them. The other thing is that we have like one-on-ones, complete one-on-ones. Not even your own. You have your own department, but then cross departments that we have those one-on-ones, and we schedule those throughout the day, and we have our all hands. We have an all hands for the full company once a week. But then the other part is making sure that people set their own parameters and boundaries.
Mhm. Okay.
Like that's the big thing when people are like, oh, do I have to work until 6 because that's going to be this time zone? And the answer is no. And I told my team, I was like, God forbid you should ever have to call 911, but you'll notice when you do, they say, do you need fire, ambulance, or police? They don't say recruiter, software developer. None of that is a full emergency. it's
Right.
just it's just not. If it's a true emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Otherwise, just wait until tomorrow. And I think we have to put that in perspective,
Yeah, that's great.
um, because I might be dealing with real life, you know, at the same time. But then I also, if but I do know if I do have to talk to some of my peers, I know that they are there, and
Yeah.
so it's important that with us, we the other way we started connecting is that we don't have a start time or end time.
Okay.
So there are some people who opt to start work like at the same time, keep Seattle hours, even though they're in New York. So they might work starting at 11 o'clock if they need to. The other thing is making sure that you time block.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so you say, I don't schedule anything. This time is upon request. And I don't block those things out so that nobody like goes over your personal time.
Do you think that the ability to work at whatever hours work for you hurts productivity or helps productivity?
I like to think that it helps productivity. But I think there are some times where it's like, because what doesn't help productivity is when someone says, oh, we're going to have, like where you don't have the flexibility and you have to, like your kids are at home at school, or you want to be at an opportunity, like you want to go to lunch with a friend, or you want to
Yeah.
be able to have those things to connect. I think me personally, like I try really hard to set boundaries. So I think I overwork, but that's like my happy place. I should probably talk to a therapist about that. But I think that it's helpful knowing that that's in place so
Yeah.
that I started working out, and I never would have done that before. even though I've worked at home, because now I know I have the freedom of choice.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so sent this quote to my team this past week. It's like every day you have a chance and a choice.
Mhm.
And I just kind of look at that when I wake up, and sometimes I get very excited at 6 o'clock and think, oh well, I'm back to bed. I'm gonna work Seattle hours. I can sleep for 4 more hours if I need to.
That's awesome. I
Yes.
agree. I think it, and someone, we have a comment, Rachel says it helps more than it doesn't. And I agree. I feel like I knew what the answer was, but I know there's also lots of C-suite executives out there thinking, holy moly, working whatever hours people want. That sounds horrible. How would we get anything done? But I agree with you. And then it just we're back at that thing around flexibility and work-life balance. And also there's a lot of research that we all function better at certain times, right? So I hammer out work really great between the hours of 8 and 10. From there, it's a little slow going. And then after my kids go to bed late at night, I've got another good 4 hours in me where I can hammer out work
Wow.
like there's no tomorrow. And those are my working hours. And I mean, I work 9 to 5 essentially, but I know that about myself. And so I think, why not let people work at the time that works for them? If they're super productive at an hour when the office technically isn't open, that's fine. As long as, if they need to be answering customer phone calls, maybe not. But for the most part, what's the harm in letting people work at the
Right.
time that works for them? It's going to make them happier and healthier and more productive, I would assume.
I'm a daylight person. So like I work a lot in the summer and I don't want to in the winter. I'm like a bear. Like I want to hibernate. I don't want to wake up because it's still dark. So I feel like I don't need to wake up at those
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. My son is 2 and he comes in my room around 3 in the morning. Usually I can coax him back to sleep, but this morning I'm like, he was awake and I'm like, let's go back to sleep. And he's like, no, daylight. I'm like, no, just because the sun's up, it doesn't mean it's time to wake up.
Well, but one thing that's really important to remember, especially when you work at home, and this is something that I think is really hard for executives to do, is be sure that you too, like, send it on silent or schedule meeting things to go at 8 in the morning at the person's time zone.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the hard part when you say, oh, you can work whatever, but people see that you work from 4 a.m. to like 4,
To
to
2
4
a.m.
a.m. Yeah. Then people are like, oh, well, what is it? Do I have the freedom of choice, or if this is being praised more, if this is what people are doing? And I think that's the hardest part, that I'm not saying that we do well, but that's the suggestion, to make sure that you too, like, write it down on a good idea, schedule the emails to go out the next day. You can send
Yeah.
the Slack message, but schedule it to go out the next day so that you can help encourage people to not get burnout.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, and then we're back to communicating more about communication and how we're going to work together. I had a client at the beginning, they're still my client, but at the beginning of COVID, this client had one manager level who was sending emails out at 4 in the morning. And I was telling the boss, I'm really worried about him if he's working at 4 in the morning all the time. And so I talked to him about it, and he said, well, with my kids and everything, that's really the time. I don't really want to be working at 4 in the morning, but that's the only time I have some solid work time. And so then we talked about, well, could you schedule your emails so that people don't know you're working at 4 in the morning? But then the other option is just to say that people are going to work at the time that works for you. Just because you get an email from him at 4 in the morning doesn't mean that's what we want you to be doing.
That's right.
That's what works for him. You do what works for you. So don't worry about when it comes. But and then also, yes, executives can't be sending emails for 15 hours a day, but to be able to, or if they are, being very verbal about the fact that I'm doing that because of my level, and I would never expect you all to do it. I'm the owner of Civility Partners. I'm going to work whenever I need. I
That's
don't
right.
expect my team to do that. And they know that. They know emails coming through aren't for them to respond to at the middle of the night. So We have some questions. Should we answer some
Oh
questions?
yeah, let's do that.
Michael says, what remote time tracking software does your organization use and what are the pros and cons? My
We
answer is
don't
easy.
use it.
We're small. We use Gusto for people to clock in and out. What do you?
Yeah, we don't clock in and out, but we use Gusto too.
There you go.
Partly there.
Easy. Michael, the pro
Boom.
is that it's easy. I don't know what the cons are. It works for me. Let's see. Peter says, how do you suggest that a company can help employees who aren't knowledge workers to have the same flexibility as remote workers? Help employees who aren't knowledge workers have the same flexibility as remote workers. I don't know that I fully understand what a knowledge worker is.
Yes, I'm wondering when it says a knowledge worker, does that mean someone who is that looking at those levels? Is that looking at someone who's in leadership?
Yeah,
Peter,
Peter,
help us out.
elaborate for us and we'll answer your question. Do
'Cause,
elaborate. And then, of course, you're getting compliments on your glasses.
well, I didn't I do love them, but I have to admit I had another pair on my desk that were really obnoxious, and I just found out that I have to get a new prescription.
Oh, bummer.
You get to a certain age and then
Yeah, you
it
get
just
to
keeps
have
going.
all kinds of glasses. Okay, Peter's elaborated that a service worker, someone who has to report
Oh,
to a location versus someone who gets to be remote. So how do you manage all of that? That some people maybe can't be remote.
you have to do the same piece. Like that's the part that is tricky for people to acknowledge. Like if we say we don't have a start time here, that means we don't have a start time here. And so what is interesting is that I think a lot of people would be okay in a hybrid model. Because we're seeing some people are saying, "Oh, I don't want to work if there's a hybrid model. I definitely don't want to go back to the office."
Mhm.
But if they I think what people don't want to do, some people don't want to do, like me, I don't want to have to wake up at 5 o'clock, go through the whole thing of getting ready, then be in the car for an hour to go to work. So maybe you allow people to show up when the times that's best for them. And if they come at noon, then they come at noon. It's the same thing that you would give people that are at home. And I think that's really important. And then the other part is to have a policy. If something that affects the whole organization, make sure that you are giving that you're putting it in Slack to the whole team, that if
Yeah,
you start a Zoom, you invite everybody and you make sure that you're scheduling it at a time where everybody can come, so people can feel that piece. But I think it's tricky. You have to give the same benefits and you have to be okay with that.
yeah,
We give a wellness budget and we started giving it like a work at home budget. Like we give people a stipend. And so that means you want to be fair. To be fair and to be equitable, that means you give people a wellness, you know, everyone gets a wellness budget. Everybody gets those pieces to for a new laptop or something that can help them work in those environments. And I think that's something that we have to get used to.
yeah. I think too, Peter, to add to what Jackie's saying, sometimes I think certainly there could be resentment, and I've heard about this between the people who have to come in because that's part of their job function versus people who get to be remote. But I think it boils down to having, competencies, knowledge, skills, and abilities. If the job entails that you have to be at work, then it is what it is. And so you can be fair in all the ways that you can possibly think of. If remote people get some sort of home office stipend, then the people coming to work should get the same amount of money for something else. But I think, it is what it is. I would love to climb the Eiffel Tower, but unless I'm an Eiffel Tower worker, I'm probably not,
The
I think
job is
sometimes,
the job.
yeah, it's just you have to want to come to work and be able to do the things that are required while you're here if that's the role that you're applying for or that you have. So I think I am, of course, all for making sure everybody is happy and feeling that it's equitable. But if you have to be at work, you have to be at work. You can't balance the resentment that may build. Um, let's see, going back to Michael's question, he was saying he was asking about time tracking on projects and time on productivity. You know, I'll answer quickly. So we have clients, right? So we're billing clients by the hour. And so we were using Zoho, which is a very large CRM slash invoicing slash it does a lot of stuff. We're actually just moving over to QuickBooks. So it's pretty simple to have people bill their hours. So that does that help, Michael? And I don't know, simple answer on my end. Do you track your projects and things on your end, Jackie? Do your employees, because you're internal, so you're not doing
Right. We
client work.
don't, and we just look at it from their remit, this is what that where we are, and giving the feedback. So in the more of the traditional method that we're looking at.
Yeah. And then we have another question from Kimberly. How do you measure productivity? I've seen a lot of discussion about productivity, but I don't think clicks, et cetera, is efficient. I'll share one answer just because I talked about this I have a LinkedIn Learning course on flexible work. So check out, I think it's the very last movie in that course. I have a whole list of things that you can use to measure, but I think it is more than just clicks. So you could say, do people work who are working from home make more phone calls, have more sales, do more, are their projects being turned in earlier? Everything that's tangible is measurable. So I think you have to figure out what are the things that are important. If they're supposed to be making customer calls, how many of those calls are they making, how many things get resolved. But check out that last movie in my LinkedIn Learning course for more. But you're right, I think you have to figure out what can we measure, and then let's start measuring it. You can also measure ROI. Is it more expensive for people to be at home or more expensive for us to pay rent or a lease? Is it more expensive to give everyone some ergonomic office stuff at home or to buy it and make sure it stays here? So the options are endless. Whatever is important to your company to measure productivity, you can measure it.
By the way, I have to hop in here. I like that you're like, oh yeah, they have this little class or whatever. It's one of the best class. It's one of the best classes on LinkedIn Learning.
Oh,
If you
thank
have
you.
not checked it out, please go check that out. Oh yeah, this little thing, this little video, whatever. No, it's like absolute. It's required watching. Um,
Thanks.
and I think the other part is you have to be careful when you start implementing tools. For every tool that's out there, you can Google search how to dupe that tool. So, I just to go further with what Catherine is saying, do that and then explain the metric so that people know that this is not punitive, right? Like you want to say, this is the metric that we found success.
Hmm.
And so this is what we're expecting everyone to do. And you can ask people to report back. Or if you're seeing the productivity, sometimes, a lot of times this goes into play when things are getting a little off balance, when you're saying, wait, this is not work, something's not working, we need to go back to basics. And so I think it's great to look at the things that you can measure,
Hmm.
but also make sure you're telling people why you're measuring it. I know that my team, I was looking for a really hard to fill role, and we were measuring from talent acquisition, and I was looking at the numbers, and I was like, y'all aren't going to believe it, we went through 1,000 resumes to find that one person.
Wow.
And I was like, that that is not gonna work. Like it was a really hard one. So okay, I was like, let me look at a normal job. It's like, okay, we don't need to go through 1,000, but close. And I was like, wow, you really have to look at those things, because then you can, if you don't measure it, then you can't get better. So I love those tips from that.
I love what you're saying. Yes, you do have to communicate, and it's okay to say, we don't know what we're going to find. We just kind of want to know. Like that thousand, it's good to know. It doesn't really affect you moving forward because that's not the standard. You knew it was a very specific job, but I think the more you can collaborate with your employees to figure out what do they think that we should be measuring, and that's going to help it feel like it's not punitive. We're measuring all of you for quality scores, and if you don't meet them, you're out. It's just it's a new way of working. Let's figure out what the metrics are. What's the average number of X, and then we can build from there. And it's okay if and any HR person would kill me for saying this. I'm just getting into KPIs for my very small team, and like I've been telling them, if you don't hit them, it's fine. We're just learning these guys together, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of a KPI. But it's like, I think this is a KPI. Let's see what happens. So collaborating and figuring out what you're going to measure.
I love that, though. I really do.
Somebody else is saying it would be interesting to see how the 4-day studies measure. I know that I've been seeing that in the news too, that we're
Yes.
maybe moving to 4-day work weeks. What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
I I think I would just, like how you just kind of adjust. I think I would just adjust. I would
Mhm.
start to be excited about Thursdays. I would still be like not as much Mondays. Like I feel like I would personally would just adjust, and then I
Mhm.
would find myself working like 15-hour days. Like I don't for me personally, I it's that cadence. And also it's like I don't know what I would do with that extra day. And I don't know if it's I'm just at that point in my life. I've worked so much. I don't know
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
a 5-day work week would do. But I also have the flexibility and I work at home, so I'm blessed with that. So that would just mean I could do more laundry and cleaning, and I'm trying to prevent that at all. I would have to actually
I
look
would
at it.
rather be at work than doing laundry.
That's right. That's right. But a
I
lot
mean,
of
what's
people
the
are
old
looking
adage?
into it.
They say you only get as much, or you get as much work as you can done no matter the time. So if you're given 8 hours, it'll take you 8. If you're given 6, you can do it in 6. And I know, Europe's been in a 32-hour work week for years.
Right.
I don't know. The other day, my executive assistant said she was reading an article about how during an 8-hour workday, we really only actually work about 3 hours. And so we were, of course, laughing and joking. And then later in the day, I found us having a conversation about pets, or I don't even, we were looking up something online, totally irrelevant. I'm like, oh, I could see how that 3 hours in an 8-hour workday is happening. Here we are.
It's true. In my meeting that we were just having, that we were talking about, we were looking at this like a TikTok, and it was like, let's do yeet skirt videos. And I put it on there. Don't forget your yeet skirt videos. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it's
Yep.
work related. I promise. I promise it's work related.
I'm trying to talk my team into doing TikToks with me, which I think it doesn't count as work, right? That's like not even work, just to have fun and make TikTok.
I'll make one with you if you
Thank
want.
you. I would appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Oh, I thought somebody was asking a question, but I just wanted to see. I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. Solange? She's talking to Peter. She says, when you have service workers on site positions, I found it's not the type of position that offer flexibility that remote workers have. A nurse or a doctor has patients or surgery scheduled. You can't say they can come in anytime. This is
That's
true.
right.
It's not the type of position that supports a flexible work schedule. At the end of that day, as we individuals have to look at what our needs are. Yeah, I agree.
That's true.
I agree.
I do too.
Oh, Joshua says that he thinks a 4-day workday would lead to employee burnout. That's possible if we're all
Oh.
trying to get. Oh, someone else says, Rachel says, I'm the only one who did the heat thing.
Oh, she's on
Um,
my team. Nope.
oh,
Somebody else did it too.
oh, good. Oh, good. But I agree, Joshua. I think it's possible because maybe we'd all be trying to get too much into the 4 days. So I don't know.
I would think that. And right now, we also I think it would reduce our opportunities to connect with our coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
But I just made that up. I don't know. That's not based on any science. But I think if some people feel like they would be more productive, maybe we make that available. I know some people have been working from home and they have like no meeting days, right?
Yes.
I would love that. I don't know if I could do a 4-day, but I could definitely do a no meeting
In fact,
Thursday.
LinkedIn has that. I'm pretty sure LinkedIn Learning anyway has a no meeting on Fridays day or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if we're going to offer flexible work, maybe that's one of the options. If you want to do 4 days, great. You have to accomplish these tasks, and as long as they're done, I mean, we've had that mentality for a long time, especially if you're salaried.
Right.
Being paid to get stuff done, it doesn't really matter when you do it or how long it takes you. And maybe everybody's moving to that, whether they're hourly or salary. I don't know.
I do say, I mean, we have changed.
Mhm.
We've changed the way we work. We've changed the way we communicate, how we get together. And so I think that if what's going on today is not working, we can't be afraid to pivot. And we've found these things like we it's better. People are making these changes, and so we talk about how people are looking for other opportunities. Right, we're seeing the Great Resignation, and we haven't talked about how are we changing retention. And
Mhm.
I definitely don't think it would be worth losing an employee over if we could make that work. But it depends. Like, I think that was a great point that it really depends on the type of work that you're doing.
Mhm.
And some of them just have different requirements.
Yeah. I think, it's okay for leaders to come out and say, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing.
That's right.
I'm leading through a pandemic that's still going on. I'm back to my co-collaborating. Let's try flexible work in a couple different ways and see what's working. And it's probably got to be more strategic than that. But let's see what works and figure it out together versus I'm making rules about things. One of my friends, she works in healthcare, and we were joking that they've all of a sudden decided that you only get 20 minutes per patient. So there's no more lounging around chit chatting with each other. They are on a serious clocked schedule because the organization, of course, thinks that's going to increase productivity and provide better patient care. Well, guess what? She's exhausted,
That's right.
and we were just joking, oh, someone at the top thought it would be a great idea, but of course they've never worked on the floor and they're making rules. And so that's the stuff you got to avoid. They would have been a lot better to go around asking, what do you think would happen if we implemented something like this, and get feedback. And I'm just all for, let's collaborate. Leaders, a good leader isn't making decisions at the top, so I think it's okay to say, let's experiment. Why the heck not?
And I think that's a big piece of why they did a study about people that were at maybe at senior levels wanted to go back into the office, and
Hmm.
other people didn't want to have to go back to the office. And I'm sure that's just like a power and control play. That a lot of people get really nervous when they can't see all of the things that are going on at the
Hmm.
office.
Hmm.
And so, but that's just telling you of a bigger problem, right? Like if you can't trust the people that work for you, that's indicative of another problem. And
Yeah.
if you want to look at every keystroke, every type to see if somebody's working, that like the problem that we have to solve, that's like that's a culture issue. Like I think that's why we're seeing these changes. People are seeing it and they would would prefer to try to get these things together. And to your point, like if the job is the job and it requires it and you don't want to do that, it might be time to rethink what kind of career you have or the
Yeah.
company that you work for. There have more jobs posted right now than in any time in history. So
Right.
it's out there, right? And right
Yeah.
here on LinkedIn, talk to some friends. Right?
Right. Put it out there. Put it right here. If you're looking for a job, go ahead and post it.
That's right. Put it in the chat.
Jackie and I will try to help you find a job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I talked about this in that flexible work course too, that, we have to work together. Employers or leaders get to say, to a certain extent, of course, this is how it has to be. If I want everybody back to work, then that's what I want. And then people recognize that you'll probably lose talent because people don't want that. And on this flip side, employer or employees have to think about, well, why do they want that? What's so important
Hmm.
about people being there? And maybe they can be innovative about ways to um, emulate whatever it is the leader is trying to accomplish with that. So trying to put ourselves in both sides of those shoes, but working together to figure out what's going to work for all of us. But when leaders make those decisions, they have to recognize people may leave, and maybe that's okay with them, and other people will come in who will fill that. I mean, that hasn't changed. We all get to decide as individuals what we want out of a job, and we go and find that. And that's no different now than in the past. It's just there's more options.
Yes, but I think you have to. I'm glad that you said that, like that, and that can happen because you changed the coffee in the office
Right,
too.
right,
Like
right.
stranger things have happened. But how do you have you how have oh my goodness your clients been adjusting to this new kind of work? What's the biggest thing, like misconception, that you think is out there?
I've seen some clients really maintain that everybody does need to be in the office, but then over time, I've watched that fade away into hybrid. So I have one client that's really itching to get everyone back, and they were ready to require everyone be back 5 days a week, and then Omicron hit, and it was just like I think he's feeling defeated, the owner, that it's just not going to happen and he has to get over it. So that's been interesting to watch his personal journey of like how important it is for people to be there. And he's relinquished to the fact that he'll be okay with a hybrid. He wants everybody in the office at least 2 days a week, and that's going to be the rule whenever we can go back. And so he'll probably stop there, I think. Versus others, who have just adapted easily. I think it depends on leadership, and if your organization is really bureaucratic, it's probably harder for you to manage something like COVID that requires letting everything go and just moving on a dime. So I think absolutely some cultures are going to survive this a lot better than others just because they were able to adapt and they were able to
Yes.
accept the innovative ideas that their employees had about how to function in this world, and they were able to adapt new software and apps and whatever to make things go. So I think right now being nimble, no matter how big you are of an organization, is going to be key. Or if I think a lot of times or big organizations, it's hard to be nimble, but giving the departments then the opportunity to be
Yes.
nimble on their own, and then report back on what's working well so that the rest of the company can adopt whatever is working. So that's a big piece of advice that I've been giving out. You have to be nimble, and it can't all whatever leaders out there who like to hang on to power, their company's not going to survive if they do
Oh my
that.
gosh, I need to record that. Did anybody record that? I need that clip. And if anybody says anything, I'm just gonna forward them a video. I'll be like, talk to Catherine. Talk to Catherine. Because that is not going to work. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed as well, is that because everybody is like distributed, those organizations that are fully distributed, we're seeing a lot of subcultures that we
Mhm,
haven't seen before.
mhm,
And it is a different spirit of what's going on. And that is really, from a talent acquisition perspective, we really have to ask, okay, this is what the company culture is. So what is this? Like what is your department like? What is the
mhm,
culture there? And what would be a culture add so that we make sure that you are still learning the lessons of being inclusive and cross-functional and all of that thing.
mhm.
But we're seeing that a lot. And I like that idea of, if that works in your department, do that. But you do have to be collaborative. You, I mean, and you can do more than you think.
Yes.
You can handle it. I don't know
Yes.
you, but I promise you can.
I agree. I agree. I do have a question for you. This came up yesterday from another client. I'm curious on your take. They have done a lot of work putting all of their knowledge, organizational knowledge, into certain places. So they have, sounds like, a library of videos and things to read and all of that to learn, screen shares where they take you through the process of how to do something. And they hired a new person who's just not doing that. She's not kind of willing to go in there, and instead she wants somebody to train her, hands-on training. And so they've been saying, well, if you could first read or whatever it is in this library and then come to a training, that person could help you, but we're not going to start from scratch. And it made me think, um, one piece of advice that I gave this client was, maybe you need to think about questions in your interviews related to how people learn, and his
Yes.
point is, I can't have two high paid people on a phone call going through training when that one person could just read. I don't know. Was I being insensitive? I mean, I would think he's not the only person struggling with this, that new hires, we have to learn differently if we're all remote. You're not going into an office to learn stuff. I don't know. Is it fair to say this is how we teach new hires and you have to learn it that way?
Yeah, because I think a lot of times we don't have options.
Yeah.
Like I now I do think that you have to make sure that you're meeting with your team. Like as soon as you make the hire, you have
Right.
to schedule time out, and make yourself available, especially in the first 30, 60, 90, as people are trying to find their feet. It's nothing for me to be, and I'll say it's 5 o'clock, but I'll hop on at 8 o'clock with one of my teammates, right? Because I want to
Right.
make sure that they know what they're doing in this time period. But I do think it's important. I mean, and it doesn't have to be a question. You can
Hmm.
just tell them, like, because I don't like it when people like try to stump the candidate, like,
Right.
how do
Right.
you work best? And no one is gonna say, well, I love searching databases for the information I need. No one's saying that, I
Right.
promise. But if you say, like, this is what it is, it's very hands-on. We need, lifelong learners that are responsible for this piece. It's very hands off, low touch. And so at the very least, when they get there, they're not going to be upset because if they accept the job under those circumstances, they would know those things. But I
Yeah.
also think we can make it easier for our team instead of saying, go look in the people folder for everything that has to do with the job. Break it down in a sensical, logical way. We
Yeah.
use Confluence where I am, and we used some other tools. And I did the same thing to I was like, oh, go look in Confluence, like just go search Confluence. But at that, then I have to pull back and say, okay, wait, hold on. Let me show you Confluence. How does it work? Why is it
Yeah.
there? Who are the pieces? And
They're
so,
like, where's the job aid for Confluence?
right. Where's
Okay, I got to start
Confluence? It's like, I don't know. I'll tell you tomorrow. I'm busy. But you can, like, I'm trying to make it easier. Like, let me show you the links of where it is and documenting the process. And if you do that, the other scary part is someone has to manage that all the time
there. Hmm.
because
Yes.
people are doing a process from 2 years ago, and we don't
Yeah.
even have that software anymore. So you have to be careful too when you just.
Yeah, we try to make it everyone's responsibility that if you see something in it, we call it, we're small. There's only 5 of us, so we have just a Google Doc called a playbook, and but it is everyone's responsibility to update if you see something's not right or to add if you think of something. And one of my employees in particular is really good at reminding everyone about that. So she's kind of and that's very helpful, because I probably wouldn't remind people, but it has been super helpful, even in my team of 5, to have this running document of how to do things. So, yeah, just got to make it everybody's responsibility,
And then do it.
and then do it. Have
Because
somebody
I've
manage.
followed people's processes and then it's like, oh yeah, we don't do that. It's like, wait, this is the wish list process or what you actually do. This is the
Yeah,
way we should be doing it. No,
right,
I want what do we actually do? The good, the
right,
bad, the ugly. Just hit me with
right. That's funny. Well, this has been really fun. It looks like Jamila's asking what industries are we seeing that's moving towards remote work. So maybe that's our last question here. I don't really have an answer. I think every industry where it makes sense for people to be remote is the answer, but I don't have any specifics. Do you, Jackie?
No, really more departments. I mean, I've been seeing like software development, especially those places where that traditionally they don't have enough. They're looking for underrepresented populations. I'm seeing any of those roles. People are trying to look and work at home so that they can work like from a distributed team. And in talent acquisition, did you know like last month, Recruiter was the number 1 job. It peaked over software developers.
Oh my goodness. Holy
Yes. And
moly.
so they're like, you can work from the moon. People are just not even, they're like, wherever you are. So I'm seeing that, but I think we're seeing it just depending on the company, but there's so many. Remember to put remote in there when you search, and make sure you're not searching remote Oregon, because that's the number one place where jobs are posted, because they don't realize that it's a real place.
Oh, that's
So
a good little tip. Thanks.
yes.
Oh goodness. Let's see. I guess we have a couple other questions. And Soul Angel, I wanted you to know I saw your comment about how to say your name. So thank you for correcting me. Let's see. Soul Angel says it ties to company culture. If the company culture is that you need to be independent learner, self-starter, then that's the culture. Yeah. Then you find somebody who can function in that. And then Michael says, is the shortage in workers long-term after COVID in the construction industry, manufacturing, hospitality, et cetera, industries because of the desire to work remotely by so many? Cost of travel and time back and forth is costly. I guess I don't know. I mean, I think, well, construction's hot right now. So I guess I didn't realize that there was a shortage of workers in construction versus hospitality.
Right.
There's a lot less travel. So people may have left the hospitality industry for somewhere else.
I think
I
the
don't know.
shortage is for that. Well, they weren't paying enough. People were not getting benefits. Like, understand what happened is, like, fully these people all of a sudden didn't have a job, didn't have
Mhm.
a background, didn't have a 401k. Like, those, that was like massive. And then similar to when there's been other tragedies, like, they never want to go back there again.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
So they realized this is not conducive. Like, I can't be one paycheck or one pandemic. I mean, they don't come around that often, but
Hopefully
one
not.
pandemic away from not taking care of my family and getting evicted. And so people started looking big picture. And
Mhm.
I think that's the main piece, is why we're seeing people looking for that.
I mean, I think it too, it's the ages coming through into the workforce, right? So I didn't grow up with the internet. It came into my life when I was in college. And the younger generation that it's coming into the workforce grew up with the internet. So they have no problem. We
That's
joke
right.
this way, or I guess we're not joke. The older generations almost are frustrated that the younger generations demand respect and all of this stuff. And we poke fun at that. But what's wrong with that? Kudos to them, A, and B, they grew up on the internet. So like, no, this isn't working. I'll just find something different. I mean, that's what the internet provides.
That's
And
right.
so I think this isn't going to change as long as the internet's around. It's just getting easier and easier to find a job that suits you. And yeah, so I don't know. I think people, if they feel frustrated with something, it's just easy to leave, especially now.
Especially right now.
Right
Don't
now.
pass go. Don't collect $500. Just go. Just go.
Yes. So I'll leave my a final thought, and then Jackie, I'd love to hear your final thought, which is with the Great Resignation comes a lot of data related to why people leave. And it's so easy for employers to say, well, they went off to leave construction and they want to start a yoga studio or whatever. But I would argue that it has to do with your culture and not giving the employees something they need. So what we've been doing for our clients is when we do those exit interviews, we take all of those notes and we move them into themes. So we have, like, one client had basically 55% turnover over last year. So we have half of the workforce's reasons why they left, and it has nothing to do with changing careers. It has to do
That's
with the
it.
culture. And so um, here's a list of things to do to change your culture so that people don't leave. And so you use that data if you have it, move it into themes so it becomes tangible and actionable, and then adjust from there. So that's kind of my final thought. What's
I
yours?
love that. No, I think you kind of gave me an idea listening, continuing with what you're saying. Don't, like, do stay interviews as well.
Yes.
And I don't think people do those enough, of figuring out why are people staying. And I know that it can be a really a scary time, but I think it is, that makes sense to just evaluate. The good news is that you don't have to guess. You can talk to your employees and you can see what is working and work in that direction. If you ask the right questions, you will get the right answers to the test. You don't have to make it up. And
Yeah.
making it up would be really expensive. So
Yeah. Don't
and
guess and put in
don't
things.
please don't guess.
Yeah. And
So
doing surveys too. Make it, do surveys
pulse
to,
surveys, yeah.
yeah. So awesome. Well, we're on the same page. I always love talking to somebody who confirms everything I believe in the world.
Yes, me too. I just need you
Confirmation
in my
bias
house and
right
I'll be
there.
like, Catherine, am I right, Catherine? She'll be like, yep. Maybe you could put that on video for me too. I'll send
Yeah.
you one too.
Okay. And we'll just hold it up when someone disagrees. Like, here's my clipping of
Catherine's
someone
right.
saying I'm right.
That's right.
I like that. Well, thanks all for listening in. I appreciate it. This was super fun, Jackie, and I look forward
Yes.
to writing a blog post with you now because you
Yes.
said that you would. So I'm
I
holding.
will. We'll collaborate for sure.
All right. Thank you all.